Welcome, everybody, to the Vegas Nation Takeaways podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Fang. We're brought to you by Station Casinos, STN Sports. Download the app today. Joining me right now, I have from the Raiders, Raiders.com digital reporter Levi Edwards. Levi, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me today.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
Yeah, I know training camp is ramping up. All the official dates are listed on Raiders.com. The roster is ready to roar. What so far can you tell us about some of the key things that you think the Raiders will really be honed in on in the start of this training camp?
Consistency. I know that sounds like an extremely vague answer, but
I gave you an
consistency
extremely
is,
general question too.
yeah. I definitely say consistency is the thing that they're going to be honing in on is making sure everybody's doing the right thing and also having right patterns. And when I say right patterns, I mean, it's going to, once we get into training camp, we're going to see who's ready and who's not. We're going to see who spent the offseason training. We're going to see who spent time on their nutrition, who, made sure that they paid attention to playbook, things like that. So really, people are going to come in, and I think the coaches and the organization is going to stress consistency and being able to do the right things at the right times. And even though it is going to be a little bit of time to get everybody adjusted on the right page, I believe that just with what I've seen from this front office and with this coaching staff, those are the things that they really pay attention to and pride themselves on the most is, will you be able to be consistent? Will you be able to be available? And so it's going to be exciting to see what those guys can do when they step on the field.
Nobody preaches consistency more, I think, than Max Crosby when it comes to a player on this roster, and as well as on the other side, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. There's a lot of people on this roster that have proven time and time again that they can set an example, set a tone for this team. When you think about some of those key players and just how important it is that they set that tone in this training camp, I read a little bit about the Max article there as well that you guys posted. What did you hear from them that can really help not just motivate the team, but to get that ideal, to get that goal set for the others to see as an example?
Definitely leading by example. When it comes down to it, when you see the top guys, when you see the guys that are established, that are made men, when you see them doing the right thing, and when you see them on top of their stuff, making sure everything is, going the right way, then it makes other people follow in line. Because the thing is that people work hard and people do the right things, just in the off chance that things do go right. And so, and when I say that, I mean like it's hard for people to run through a dark tunnel without necessarily being able to see light. And those are guys, when you think about Max Crosby, when you think about Devontae Adams, those are guys that have been running nonstop and doing the right thing for such a long time to where the successes come. And so when you're a younger player, you're looking at them and it's like, man, 5, 6 years from now, I want to be in the spot they're in. I want to have the same impact they're having. So when you see those top guys, with that level of work ethic and consistency, it brings everybody else along as well. And it also tells them like, look, you might have to do the same thing I did. You have to just continue to run, and you have to continue to grind and continue to stack days without necessarily knowing the results of what will happen. You just got to trust the process.
Interesting, that process. We've seen a lot of undrafted free agents really make their mark and being guys that can stand out. Last year, you saw Luke Masterson, Darian Butler. These guys stepped up. Isaiah Palomao. There's a whole slew of players that came out of that pool that really showed that they have talent to make it on this team. And particularly from what I saw last year, Luke Masterson kind of jumped off the page early on. Has there been somebody like that, whether it's Drake Thomas or, UNLV's Adam Plant, if there's somebody to you that's really kind of standing out early that has made an impression on you in terms of what we're discussing right now?
I'm going to name two guys, and that's a fantastic question, Heidi, because I always love hyping up undrafted guys. I love the underdog story. Who
Yep.
doesn't love an underdog story? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the two guys that I'm going to point out, one that you already just previously mentioned, Adam Plant, UNLV kid. He was highly touted coming out of high school, obviously, and I know you probably covered him at Bishop Gorman and his time there, and you also probably covered him as well at UNLV. And he's a guy that has NFL size, and he was probably a little bit, overlooked due to the success that the Rebels did have in his time there. And I think he's a guy that he's a disruptor. He's a disruptor, and a lot of the coaches and a lot of the players, Chandler Jones, he's given
Mhm.
his flowers to Adam Plant so far
Oh,
throughout training camp. Max Crosby's another guy that's given his flowers to Adam Plant. I've heard a lot of good things about him in the building. But another guy that I want all of you to keep an eye on. He's not necessarily a undrafted guy from this year, but this young man, he came in last season. He got hurt, and so now he's officially coming back for what is technically his rookie season, and
okay.
that is Sincere McCormick.
Uh-huh.
And he's a guy that has really stood out to me. And it's, considering how loaded the Raiders running back room is, uh, it gets a little hard to stand out, amongst guys like Zamir White and Brandon Bolden, Amir Abdullah. And so for him to come in, having missed an entire season, come back, have the confidence, know the playbook, have his body right, and really, make his presence felt and look sharp and look precise and powerful on runs. He's a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of. And he's also a guy that had an outstanding college career. He was teammates with Tyreek Woolen at UTSA.
Okay.
So he was a two-time Offensive Player of the Year in the Conference USA Conference. And so this is a guy that he had a little bit of hype coming in to the Raiders, but not a lot of people talk about him and how great of a pickup he was. And so he got hurt, and it kind of stalled a lot of the talk or the hype around him. And so now I think that he has a great opportunity to come in and wake a lot of people up and remind them of who he is.
For sure. I wanted to go back a little bit on a couple of those names, like you just mentioned here. With Adam Plant, what would it mean to the Las Vegas Raiders to see a kid that has really pushed through here in town be a standout on the team? Do you feel like that can help a lot in bringing in kind of the people maybe that followed him through Bishop Gorman, but not necessarily paid attention too much to what's going on with the Raiders, help bring in some local feel to this team?
Absolutely. And the biggest comparison that I could think of is I remember when I first came in, there was a young man by the name of Javen White, who you probably
Yep,
remember.
yep.
And Javen White was able to captivate the fan base all over the spectrum because this is a young man who is from Oakland, who
Mm-hmm.
went to UNLV to play football and then got picked up by the Raiders and was able to find a couple of reps with the team and kind of find a role for himself. So that was a great success story for kind of like a local kid, best of both worlds situation. And so for a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, who's such a rich team and tradition and history, they're still trying to forge that in Las Vegas. You
Mm-hmm.
bring all of these great moments, all these great players, and you bring them to a new city. And even though Las Vegas has done a great job of embracing the Raiders, it still, takes time. We've been here for 3 years now, officially, and so to have a hometown hero for the local fan base to really get behind, of course he's gonna have to work hard, just like everybody else. He's not gonna make the team just because it'd be a nice, cute story. He's gonna have to work hard. He's gonna have to be consistent, like I said, and that defensive line. If I must say, in my opinion, I believe the defensive line of the Las Vegas Raiders is probably the deepest and best position group of any of the position groups on the defense. And so he's going to have to compete with Chandler Jones, Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz, guys, and interior guys like Bilal, guys like Jerry Tillery. There's a lot of really good guys in that defensive line. Not to mention the guys that they drafted.
Yeah.
You have to compete against Tyree Wilson, the number 7 pick in the draft. You got to compete against, Nesta J. Silvera,
Yeah.
guys like that. There's a lot of guys on that team that he has to compete with if he wants to earn this opportunity. So it's not going to be handed to him. He's going to have to take it.
Love that. And when you talked about Sincere McCormick, you mentioned how loaded this running back room is. Some of the things I've been thinking about in terms of how this room develops is looking at Zamir White and Britton Brown. And now, like you mentioned, Sincere McCormick. How competitive will it become during camp for these guys to legitimately earn themselves a spot on the starting 53?
It's gonna be very competitive. I'm not going to touch on the elephant in the room.
No, yeah, yeah.
You guys already know what the elephant is.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna touch that. Whatever happens with that happens with that. But what I will talk about is, Britton Brown, Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden, all those guys. They're all adequate running backs, and they've either had great success either with other teams as journeymen, or they've had success, last year within the preseason because they're young guys. So it's definitely not lacking of talent for sure. So each one of those guys is going to have to come in, and also you can't forget Sincere. You also can't forget Austin Walter, who was
yeah.
on the practice squad last year, and he played exceptionally well during the preseason last season. So it really is a lot of good players, and also you don't have to necessarily say this is our guy. Obviously there is a elephant who's known to be the workhorse back, but who's to say that you can't switch it up and bring in a couple of guys and kind of share the workload. Kind of the same thing with Amir last year with him being a third down back and him getting a lot of those reps. And Zamir came in and he got some reps, as a third and short guy because he's a very powerful, quick guy. So there's a lot of guys that have a lot of different assets and traits and abilities that they bring to this running back core. And so something that I noticed, and you can kind of read it on the position breakdown for running backs that's on
Yeah.
Raiders.com. Uh, the running back room is the only room of any position group on the team that returned everyone. So they didn't let anyone go, they didn't bring anyone in. It is the only position group on this team that looks the exact same as it did last season. And that's for a reason. That's not by coincidence. It's because they like who's already there and they feel like they didn't need to add or subtract anyone to make it work.
I love that. We talked a little bit. I have a couple more for you. A little bit about the linebackers, a little bit about the D line. One of the areas I wanted to touch on is the secondary. Just that's one room that did see some change up. There's Duron Harmon. You're not going to probably see him this year. There's a lot of people that have kind of shown as new faces. Marcus Epps, interesting name to me. There's also in the secondary cornerback room, like somebody like Tyler Hall that had shown some sparks last year. Looking forward to seeing them getting back into camp. When you see the growth that's had, and even when you go back to linebacker and names that are brought in on the offseason, like Robert Spillane, how much different do you think the complexion of the secondary is going to be this year?
The secondary is a position on this team where you can have predictions and expectations about every other position based upon what you've already seen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Cornerback and linebacker are the two positions that are so complex because even with the amount of experience that the two position groups do have, there's not a whole lot of tape on a lot of these guys. You're going into a linebacker room that has Robert Spillane, who probably has the most of what you can see in terms of a skill set on tape. Devon Diablo, he's played a lot of meaningful snaps his rookie season, but then he got hurt last season halfway through the year. And then now he's coming back and he's bigger and stronger and he's supposed to be the guy. So we have to see, the muscle mass, how will that help him, or how will that change things as a linebacker within the room? Then you have Luke Masterson, who got a couple of reps last year as an undrafted rookie and got a lot of meaningful playing time. How has he improved? Has Darian Butler improved? Guys like that. Same thing for the secondary. You're bringing in a lot of guys that were rotational pieces outside of Marcus Epps. A lot of the cornerbacks that were brought in were rotational pieces on other teams, such as David Long, Duke Shelley,
Yeah.
Tyler Hall. Before he came, he got some meaningful slaps at the slot, at nickel, but he was a rotational guy before he came. So really the only true starters, when you look at the secondary, only true full-time starters that you have that what they can provide is Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Merrick, and Marcus Epps. But all three of those players are still extremely young. Two of those guys are going into their third season. So it's yet to see, you have another year in Patrick Graham's system. How do you fit? What have you added to your skill set? How have you improved? What have you done? And so a lot of other positions and a lot of other guys on the team, I believe you kind of already know what you're getting. And with this, you don't necessarily know what you're getting. And really, I would say that cornerback room is going to be the most competitive for fighting for jobs of any position group on this team.
And I'm looking forward to that. I love watching defense. You know that. That's like one of
Those
my
those
favorite
those
areas to focus.
those one on ones with the DBs and the receivers.
Yeah,
Once training camp starts, that's
yeah.
gonna be where people, you know, gain gain their money and lose their money. I'll tell you that right now.
Now, just lastly, on both sides of the ball, I'm looking to find a name from you, maybe somebody that we're not already zoned in on, not like a Max or not like Michael Mayer, but somebody that you think is really gonna pop off the page when training camp starts is just somebody that maybe people hadn't heard of, somebody that we don't know about, that everyone's gonna go, wow, that is impressive. Who do you got on defense?
That's an amazing question.
Ah.
Honestly,
Yeah,
this is a guy that I've kind of been. Can I give you two?
sure, of course.
These are two guys that I've seen a lot of from rookie minicamp to OTAs, and these two guys have really impressed me a lot. And I think they could be great additions to this team. And they're both in the secondary. And I'm going to tell you, Duke Shelley.
Okay.
Duke Shelley, I believe, has been really sticky in coverage. He's gotten a lot of reps with whether it be first team, second team, whatever. He's been getting a lot of reps with against a lot of guys, and he's looked really good. And then when you look at his stats, he, despite only playing a little under 300 snaps last year, he had the third best PFF coverage grade of any cornerback in the league. And that's something people don't know. So he was in Minnesota and he was a guy who was rotational, but with the snaps that he did have there, he made it count.
Yeah.
And it parlayed into him being here now. And I think he could be a great asset, as well as fourth round cornerback Jacorian Bennett
Nice.
from Maryland. And
Okay.
that's another guy who was overlooked at Maryland just because of the fact that you had Deonte Banks, who was a first round cornerback on the other side of the ball. And so this is a guy who's fast. He ran a 4.3 at the combine. When you see him in person, he's built. He's very muscular for a corner. He definitely gives off Nate Hobb vibes from his
Oh,
rookie season.
okay.
Except obviously potentially a little faster. But this guy, he seems like an athlete, and he has a great story of he had to get out the mud. He was unranked coming out of high school. He had to
Mm.
play JUCO, and then went to Maryland, and he was a guy that the defense really got behind in college. And I really just like his composure. He just has that dog in him when you meet him and you talk to him and you see him on the field and he moves with quickness. So, with time, obviously it'll get a little easier for him to move around. But those are the two guys that I've really liked what I've seen from so far. And obviously the pads haven't been on. So things are going to change once training camp starts. But those are two guys that, if I can put them a little bit more on the radar going into training camp, by
Yeah.
all means.
Let's do it. Okay. Offensively, who's your dog? Who's barking out there?
On offense, I'm going to go Dylan Parham.
Okay. I like that
I
one.
know, yeah, I know offensive lineman isn't a really sexy pick, but you know what? Offensive linemen, they make the team go. If you know anything about the trenches, you know anything about the construction of the offense, quarterback can't do nothing, running backs can't do nothing. You know, gotta, if you want the rock, you gotta block. So I think Dylan Parham, he's a guy that I really liked what I saw from him last season. This year he's coming in, he's had a full off season program. He has really taken the reins of continuing to hone his game, put on some muscle. I really like what I've seen from him, and he's another guy that has that dog in him. And I'll throw in Thayer Munford as well in there too,
Nice.
a guy
Okay.
who was drafted with him. He's another guy who I feel has improved a lot going into this second season. So those two guys who were drafted last year, those are the two people that have kind of snuck on my radar a little bit. They're not going to let themselves get bullied. And
Okay.
it's hard because you're going up against some good guys in that defensive line rooms.
Mhm.
But I really like what I've seen from them. Dylan Parham, he was on the Professional Football Writers Association's All Rookie team last year,
Yeah.
and he's a guy who I think, uh, with more time in this system, more time for his body to mature, he could be a guy who, honestly, maybe 2, 3 years from now, if not next year, he could be in that conversation for being a Pro Bowl guard.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting watching him last year, as many positions as he played on that line, because he was very versatile. Whenever they said, "Hey, I need you to step up at center," "I need you to step
Yeah.
up over on tackle," he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I bet I got this." So I always like watching that out of somebody. Do you think that that continues with him? That he continues to be this versatile piece, as well as maybe even Thayer Munford, like? Would he be more of a swing tackle? Or, I mean, Brandon Parker's back. There's all this interesting stuff happening on this offensive line. Jermaine Illuminor, how competitive it'll be. That's Thayer is a great name to bring up, because I think we don't talk enough about offensive linemen and thinking of how that might shape up for the Raiders. Do you have any further insight on that at this time?
I would definitely say that not necessarily something that you'll see more of, but I believe the versatility on the offensive line, especially for this Raiders team, I believe that is mandatory. And what I say by that is not necessarily like, you know, oh, we're coming in and we expect you to, play center, we expect you to play guard, we expect you to play all those. It's not necessarily like this is your slotted position. I would definitely say everyone comes in and it's expected of them to be able to know and have the ability to play different positions across the offensive line. Whether Dylan Parham gets a snap at center this year or not, it doesn't matter. This team wants an offensive lineman who can step in that role when needed to be. So it's not like, oh, well, Dylan Parham's going to see more at center. He's going to, do all these things. I think it's really a mandatory thing for everyone. I think everyone is expected to be able to excel at different positions on the offensive line to kind of, pick and plug wherever you want. So that's something that you'll just be seeing from everyone in general. Not necessarily, someone is going to be like a designated swing tackle or
Sure.
center guard combo, anything like that. I just think it doesn't matter who you are. You're expected to be able to know to play every position on the offensive line or be able to excel at least two.
I love it. Thank you again, Levi, so much for the breakdown. I know I kept you a little longer than I
Oh
had
no,
originally said,
you're
but
good. You're good.
I appreciate it so much. Great insights as always. Tell everyone what you have working on Raiders.com and where to find you on social media.
Well, my social media handle's not too hard. It's the Levi Edwards. So it's just, the Levi Edwards, pretty easy. You can find me there on Instagram and Twitter, posting content. Also, shout out Threads. I'm on Threads now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on Threads
Yeah.
as well. I think I'm just Heidi Fang. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I can't remember. There's too many things I started up. You still the
But
Levi Edwards at Threads as well?
yes. So
Okay.
same across the board.
Right.
Right now on .com, we're cooking up a lot of really good stuff. We're doing position breakdowns. Whether just basically just right now we're gonna have defensive line that's gonna be released today, and so really that's just going through every single position group, kind of like what we did today, and just breaking down who's on the team, how have they looked, where have they been, things like that. So that's been doing really well and a lot of good insight for a lot of guys that don't necessarily know who's on the team or oh, where does so and so come from. So really just kind of continuing to educate our fan base and get them excited for the upcoming season. So that I've been working on that a lot. Also just chopping up interviews with different players on the team, trying to get some more content for you guys during this lull period right now before training camp starts. So really, even though we're in the off season, when you're a content creator, as you know, there's never an off season. So
Never is.
uh,
Never
yeah.
is.
So always make sure you guys are going on Raiders.com. I'm trying to kill it. My editor Rachel, she's trying to kill it. Eddie Pascal on Upon Further Review, he's trying to give you guys good content. So we're always gonna make sure you guys are in the know how. My apologies.
That's all good. So on July 20th, the rookies report to training camp, and 25th is the day for the veterans. So everybody keep posted to Raiders.com as well as VegasNation.com, where we keep you up as well with all things Raiders. And appreciate the time so much, Levi. I look forward to speaking to you again sometime soon. Everybody that's out there that checked out the show today, we appreciate you, and we'll be back next week.